Welcome to the Innovator Marketing's podcast here today. And today we have an exciting guest, Tanya Hage Coburn, who is the Director of Marketing and Communications at Trufla Technology. Tanya, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm very excited.
We're excited to have you here today too. And I would love to know, and maybe you can start by, telling us a little bit about your background and what your role is at Trufla Technology.
For sure. My background is actually in musicology, which, for those of you who don't know, it's the study of culture, music, history, theory, society. And I was in the academic route, and I graduated with a master's in musicology, a discipline no one's ever heard of, trying to find a job and with lots of student debt looming over my head. And then I just really needed to pay my monthly student loan payments. So I fell into insurance, actually. My family works in insurance, and I got a job selling insurance back in 2012. And in 2013, I joined a company called Sharp Insurance. It was one of the fastest growing insurance companies in Canada. And that had a lot to do with their digital marketing that they were doing around that time, that a lot of brokerages and insurance companies weren't doing SEO. They weren't doing digital marketing. It wasn't a space a lot of people were doing, especially smaller scale companies. And a few months into it, my boss, he's still my boss, Sharif, recognized that maybe my skills weren't in sales, and it was more around communications and writing and social media. And that's how I became a marketer. I started the department at Sharp Insurance with me and another graphic designer. And we grew it to encompass a team that covered 12 companies across Canada. And then most recently, I joined Sharif, who was the owner of Sharp, and his technology venture called Trufla Technology, as the director of marketing and communications. And we actually provide digital marketing software tools, digital tools for the insurance distribution channel in Canada and across the world, actually. So it's been definitely a ride.
Wow, that's quite an interesting background. And so about Trufla, you mentioned that you provide this platform. Can you talk a little bit about that? Obviously, your target audience is insurance brokers and agents. So how do you actually help them? What is the unique value proposition that you provide to this target audience?
That's a great question. So unlike a lot of the fintech sectors, insurance is really behind in terms of the customer experience on the digital end. So right now, you can go get a quote from a broker. It might take you 20 to 30 minutes over the phone, and then you might get an email with your quote. And I think with consumer behavior the way it is now, and especially post-pandemic, you want things immediately. You want immediate satisfaction. Our whole thing is we provide almost a 360 look at the customer journey, from web design, forms, quote forms that take minutes, not even minutes, for the customer to fill out so they don't feel like it's a time-consuming process, to SEO and digital advertising. And then we do lead management. So when those leads come in, we've built a custom tool just for insurance leads that you can manage. And so you can do automated follow-ups. You can track your leads, your conversion rates. And then we even do the customer service side. So we've developed an application and web portal called TrueMobile, which customers can self-serve. They don't have to call in, they can self-serve to make changes on their policy, view their payments, etc. So we really look at how do we make it as frictionless and as less annoying as possible for your average consumer when insurance doesn't always have the rep of being easy. So that's what we help brokers with quite a bit.
Yeah, and it's a tough job to be able to do that. And you have so many distractions out there right now, and you're trying to devise a solution that hopefully increases the conversions that your target audience needs. And when it comes to applying some of these digital marketing tactics that you've mentioned, have you noticed certain things that work better than others?
For sure. So when we're talking about helping brokers with visibility for their website and gaining traffic, the best thing that they can do is SEO. I think it was 80% of consumers go to Google to, insurance quote Calgary. And if you know that if you're not on that first page, no one's going to come knocking on your door. So definitely a strong SEO program combined with Google Ads, especially if you're working on building your SEO program. It takes time. It's not something you can do overnight. Sometimes it takes a year to start seeing the impact of these resources going into your SEO strategy. So I would say Yeah, definitely SEO, digital advertising, and making sure that your website can convert leads, because you don't want visitors to come to your website and I don't know. I don't know what I'm buying. I can't, this site speed's too slow, or it's not obvious where to get a quote. And then they go to get a quote and it's like a 20 question long form. No one's going to fill that out. So it's optimizing both traffic and your site for conversion.
And
And then
that's
on
really,
the, sorry, go ahead.
no, please go ahead. I think that's really interesting that you mentioned that, because a lot of times when it comes to content that you're actually putting out there, you have to really think, okay, what is actually engaging? What is deterring the user away? What is actually engaging them to a point where you've instilled the confidence so they actually convert? Please go on. You were mentioning a few other things here, so let's go ahead with that.
Sure. When you look at content, it's always a struggle to engage, especially in the insurance side, your customers. And the best strategy I've seen is answering questions, not only on an SEO. Like if you're answering, Google wants you to answer questions quickly and correctly, and then that's going to help you rank. But on a user experience side, that bounce rate is going to decrease when you're actually providing good quality content that actually answers or demonstrates that the product that you're offering is valuable and will meet their needs. And I think in insurance, to be honest, every product is the same. Like the coverage is essentially the same. The price is essentially the same. So what you want to offer your customers is that frictionless web experience and speed contacting them, making sure you get that sale. I believe the statistic is, if you contact a web lead within the first 5 minutes of them filling out a form, I think you're like 80% more likely to get the sale. So you want to be the first to make that call.
Absolutely. And yes, it does depend industry to industry and certain verticals, but you're right. You have to be very responsive and be notified as soon as those leads come in, and have a way to nurture that lead to a point where you're contacting them right away and you're putting them in the pipeline and giving them the information they need to make an informed decision. I think one thing that really struck me in your earlier answer was you mentioned about speed. And I know with Google, with the recent release of the Google Web Vitals update, speed is a huge component. They relate speed to user experience, and it's really important for your website to load fast and to actually present content in the most engaging way, in the quickest way possible. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about that as to how you help your clients to achieve that level of engagement.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. So we offer a product for our brokers and insurance distributors called TrueWeb. And we have an amazing team of SEO specialists like all over the world. And you hear rumors, Google doesn't tell you what's happening, but you hear rumors, you investigate. And a year ago, we heard about the Google Page Experience update that was coming out. And the developers, along with our SEO team, work together. We always emphasize that, okay, you can do offsite, you can do content SEO, but structural web, like your website has to be optimized as well for Google Page Experience. So what we did was strip down like high res images. We made sure things load, like we did test speeds, and we made sure. We've had clients who've had different web developers and, oh, my website's really fast, but great. But what happened is it's fast, but the content's not loading quite as well. So the algorithms aren't recognizing that good quality SEO optimized content. So it was a real balance for that load speed and the mobile speed as well. But we did a year of testing, and we're happy to say, I don't think any of our clients are going to be impacted at all. They're not going to see any effect on that page experience update. That's coming out in June. It should be now. And it's going to come out June to, I think, rolling out till August.
Yeah. I believe it started already rolling out. I think in some places May already. I mean, whenever Google releases an update, I know they target certain areas gradually. Canada's kind of next to line after the States. So usually with their updates, and we'll see how it actually impacts businesses. Because I think even though this big announcement that they made last year, a lot of businesses are still not really aware of what that actually means. And they're behind in terms of the experience side of things. So they really need that level of education. So I'm interested to know, a lot of times, especially when it comes to SEO, it's a very important component and can be like the backbone of success for any digital experience. However, a lot of businesses don't really understand SEO. So
Absolutely.
how do you tackle that?
Oh, it is challenging. So when the Google Page Experience was coming out, I had our manager of SEO write up for me, like, hey, tell me everything that this update entails. Tell me all about the core vitals, define it for me so that I can do an education campaign, just to our clients, to our prospects on LinkedIn. We were going to do a series of campaigns. And when I got it, it was such good content. But I could barely understand it because it was very technical. So if I couldn't understand it, and I work in the SEO field, then the average CEO or broker principal is not going to care. They're going to be like, so the hardest part of my job is taking the technical language and massaging it so that you can paint a picture that's not too technical, that they can understand. Instead of using the acronym, you still use them, but the way you define it, I think, is key. So we did a series of videos on LinkedIn about it. We did a blog post about it. We sent out a bunch of email blasts about it. And I think the best thing you can do is not just one platform for content. Try video, try podcast, try a blog or a white paper or an infographic. Because I always say to people, you need 4 levels of communication. Everybody absorbs information differently. I'm a very visual, so I like video. Some people like to read. That's how they learn. So yeah, we did that. And I think we will be sending out some more follow-up messages about it. And we're going to do a workshop just about the page experience to make sure that people understand exactly what it entails, because we also have a do not do list. Do not do these things to your website to try to make your load speed faster, because it's just going to punish you in the end. So I think the do's and the don'ts are important too.
That's true. And often when it comes to SEO, you have to think long term, because when you apply the changes, you don't see the impact right away, but over time it snowballs. And it's important to consistently apply those changes, making sure you're following the good practices that are out there and not doing the black hat techniques, which is also another way to get short-term rankings, but you can be penalized and even be banned from Google if you take that approach.
Yeah. I've seen it happen, and it's devastating. And that's another thing. Like, a lot of our clients, you pay a lot for your SEO program, and they say, or you hear this a lot, I want an hourly breakdown of what you're doing. Okay, we could do that. We can give you an hourly breakdown. But a lot of what we do is experience. So the SEO specialists we have, they're insurance specialists who are also SEO specialists, who are also technology developers. We don't just look at one thing. Like, 1 month isn't going to be offsite. It's not going to be finding backlinks. It's going to be looking at your rankings, looking at the Google updates that are coming up or rumors that are coming up, and doing the good quality things, not the sketchy things that, yeah, they might get you rankings for a month, and then when the Google algorithms are updated and they catch you. And I think with Trufla, what I'm really proud about is with Sharp Insurance and some of the biggest companies we work with, it's been 8 years and they're still ranking on the first page of Google for many keyword terms. And I think that says something. That means that we're not doing the sketchy things that are going to get you in trouble. And yeah, that stability, that trust that you have with your client.
I love the way that you mentioned that you have this multifaceted approach when it comes to tackling some of these barriers, and also educating your audience about obviously their industry, how they can get traction within their industry online, and ultimately get better positioning for them so that they're getting more conversions. You don't see that often in companies, but I think that because you focus on a very specific niche, that's what allows you to do that. And a lot of digital marketing agencies, there's different approaches you can take. I know in our case, we actually work with pretty much every industry except for gambling, guns, and porn. But it's sometimes it can apply to certain agencies, but certain agencies like Trufla, they specialize. You specialize specifically in this sector. And that, I think, allows you to take this multifaceted approach and provide a very specialized service, and also the industry right from top to bottom. So there's a lot of insight that you can provide to your target audience. So maybe let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that's what also gives Trufla a competitive edge in the digital marketing space as well.
Absolutely. So Trufla has an interesting background. So when I started with Sharp Insurance, they had an app. It was the first, no other, not even the big like Intact or TDs in the world had a mobile app yet, but we had an app, and it did 2 or 3 things. And other brokers approached Sharif, who was the owner at the time, and said, hey, can we have that app too? And he was like, people are approaching me for this app. Why don't I do something with it? So he started a company called Sharp Mobile, and it was just a mobile app and broker portal. And then people were commenting on Sharp Insurance SEO rankings. Wow, you're on the first page of every difficult keyword term. Like, how did you do? We use a company called eMethod. He decided to buy it and provide SEO websites for other brokerages. And then in 2018, he's, I'm going to combine the two. I'm going to combine eMethod, the digital marketing aspect, and I'm going to combine True Mobile. And let's make an insurance technology out of it, insurtech out of it. So that was 2018, and it's now 2021. And the growth, especially during the pandemic, when brokers who are maybe skeptical, they think things are working fine for me now. Why do I need to invest in digital tools? We're doing fine. And then when everything went from in-person to online, there was a lot of struggle there for many brokerages. And so we stepped in as thought leaders in that industry. We had to, because it was radio silent and people were reaching out to Sharif, they were reaching out to me and a lot of the executive team at Sharp and Trufla, like, how are you doing this? So we actually launched, and it wasn't meant to be a marketing strategy at the time, but we launched this 2-day conference in June of 2020 that was called Amplify. And the whole point was to talk about how do you navigate as a broker. How do you navigate a pandemic? How do you switch to digital? How do you get your call center or your brokers to work at home without any disruptions? So we started that. I think we had 300 attendees. We had our second one in January 2021. We had 600 attendees. And it was like, that to us was a marketing tactic we didn't know was going to be a marketing tactic. We honestly did it for an educational, to really help other brokers out there. And we get calls all the time. When's your next one? We want to be on the wait list. It's free. So I think that's the interesting thing about marketing. You can try so hard to figure out what that smoking gun is. And sometimes you just stumble on it. You stumble on it and you're like, wow, this is a great resource. Like it really solidified Trufla as knowing their stuff in the insurance technology industry in Canada and around the world.
Wow. A lot of businesses have had to pivot during the pandemic. They've, had to change processes. They've obviously had to go and apply remote working policies and be forced to work remotely and still offer a same level of service. So you've definitely acted as a vehicle in allowing your target audience to be able to do that. I think that also gives you that level of establishment as a credibility and establish rapport with your audience there as well. For Trufla, obviously it has had a positive impact. Can you maybe give a little bit more insight as far as what are the marketing tactics you used to help Trufla get that level of authority? Like what has worked, what hasn't worked perhaps?
Great question. So we first decided that when you had in-person conferences and conventions, we noticed our sales representatives would come back and be like, look, brokers just aren't seeing the need to get a mobile app or to get a new website or to invest in SEO because they're doing fine. Like they're not losing money, but they're not maybe growing. And a lot of these brokerages are family run and passed down, and maybe like Sharp had a massive growth strategy, which they hit. So we knew right away, you know what, they don't necessarily understand that they might not need these products today, but in 2 years, if they don't have it, the situation is going to change. We would already see the cooperators and the Intacs buying up smaller brokerages because they just couldn't keep up. And so we knew a big part of our marketing had to be educational. It just had to be. So how were we going to do that? So we started off with a series of ebooks, and that was our gate to get leads in. So we would say, here's 10 tips to work on your SEO strategy, what you need. And it's a lovely, beautifully written, designed ebook. And of course, you'd have a web form to get it, and then we'd have that as a lead. And it was good. We did some digital advertising around it. And then we decided, you know what, let's really leverage social media. Let's go for gold. And we could do this. We started in late 2019, and we did videos. So I have an amazing team member, Tom Mulhern, a very talented videographer. And so we just filmed. We filmed and filmed on all topics that brokerages, from operations to challenges in managing leads to why SEO is so confusing. And that video, and it's like the stats behind converting for video, had a lot of impact, because at that time we were deciding, do we want to do the podcast platform or do we want to do the video platform? And the reason why we decided on video is frankly resources, because podcasting and editing sound is a lot more challenging than a 2-3 minute video on a topic. You can get a lot more content out on video than you can with podcasting. And then that just grew. It grew, and especially during the pandemic where people were so hungry for information on how to survive this very uncertain time. I think, that video content combined with blog and email marketing as well really helped us. And the event, like the virtual conferencing event where we got thought leaders from around the world to talk about digital and insurance, that was huge. It's huge.
So where do you see the future of Trufla over the next 4 to 5 years?
Very good question. I'm so impressed with where Trufla is going. Like I would never, probably Sharif, because I planned this the whole time. We're growing into the Middle East. We do have an office in Egypt. Actually, the majority of our developers are centered around Cairo. Sharif Jamal, he's Egyptian. He's from Cairo, and he wanted to invest back into the community, which that was one of the biggest reasons that attracted me to the company in the first place. So we're expanding into the Middle East. We have clients in the UK. We want to expand into the US. So it's definitely just doing a global expansion, and our vision is to be the technology provider for the insurance distribution channel globally. And I really feel like we will get there in a couple of years.
That is amazing. That is amazing. So just to shift gears a little bit here, and I understand you also run your own podcast, a Frenzy podcast. Yeah, let's tell us a little bit about that.
Something you should know about me is I'm a nerd. I'm just the biggest nerd you'll probably ever meet. And my friends growing up were nerds as well. So during the pandemic, there was a level of boredom. I'm a musician, so I'm used to singing in choirs and performing. And when you lose that, when you can't have a creative outlet that you used to, there's almost this frenetic energy that doesn't, it kept me up at night. I'm like, something's missing. And my best friend and I, Julia, we've been best friends since we were 12. We're musicians. She's a saxophonist and I'm a trumpet player. We were like, let's just talk about our life. We have an interesting, unique friendship story in that we met when we were 12. I was a visual minority, super overweight, super nerdy, mathlete, like violinist, trumpet player. And she was the opposite, like tall, like she was almost 6 feet tall when we were 12 and I'm 4'11". So we were like the odd couple. So we wanted to make a podcast about our childhood growing up, going through puberty, being in her experiencing like Lebanese culture. Cause my parents, like they're immigrants. And trust me when I say, they did not assimilate to Canadian culture. When you step into my house, it's like little Lebanon in there. So we talk about that. And then me, like culture shock at her house, which was so the opposite of my house. And it became a really fun outlet for us to discover our friendship, dig deep into some of the things that we didn't even recognize. Oh, when we felt like that when we were 14, that was anxiety, but nobody talked about that back then. And it kind of grew from there, and it was really fun. And it was just something fun. Like we didn't expect to have anyone listen to it. And then little by little, people would contact us and be like, I can really relate to that story. Or I thought I was the only one who thought that way, because we also delve into a lot of psychology and personality types, Myers-Briggs, things like that. So it was really fun, and I'm excited. I think we have a season break right now, but I think we're going to start it up soon again. It was definitely, it's funny when you do something for fun. They always say, when you do something you love, it's not work.
Yes.
It was work. I loved it, but that sound editing, that was work. I learned a lot. And doing that podcast helped me become a better public speaker. It helped me be more confident. When you're a marketer and you do PR for other people, you're always behind. You're behind the scenes. You're never in front. And it definitely gave me some more confidence being in front of people.
Mm. I think from my perspective, obviously we launched this podcast as well, and it's a great learning experience, but also with every podcast, with every guest that we bring on the show, I learn so much from the guest as well. And it's a great form of personal development. And obviously there's the advantage of the audience that you build over time that is consuming the content, and you build this rapport with that audience over time as well, and you get to present yourself as a thought leader within whatever industry that you're trying to present the podcast in. So that's really interesting. There's obviously a learning curve, but they see podcasting is the way to go these days. There's a lot of benefits from a marketing perspective in having a podcast. And yes, it is time consuming, but the rewards do pay off over time. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think when we're able to go back, we're still remote working right now, but when we're able to go back into the office, that's a platform I'd love to explore with Trufla. I always say, like, the best time for me when I listen to podcasts is my commute to work. It's my time. I put on my podcast, and it's just the feeling of, I don't know, like you have friends in your ear. And so I think for Trufla, I'd love to explore podcasting when people start to go back to work, because I think that target demographic, they'll turn us on when they're on their way to work or driving home from work or whatever. And I think that's another, like I said, how do people learn? Are they auditory, visual? Yeah, I would love to explore that. Now that I know the inner workings of podcasting, it's not so scary anymore. So I'd love to explore that with Trufla.
That's
and
awesome.
I've listened to a few episodes of your podcast, and I have to say the content is so good. It's not just, there are marketing podcasts out there where, I already knew that, but some of the subjects, like there was one, I can't remember the name, where he was talking about LinkedIn marketing. I was like, absolutely, yeah. And I had some takeaways on it, and I really am enjoying listening to this podcast. So thank you for putting that out there for us.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you found it useful. And I think that over time, we have a great list of speakers that will be coming on board in the near future that are also going to be sharing some really good insights. And just like yourself, with every guest, we learn something new, even being in the marketing industry. And I think that's what, marketing is about, is that it's a very turbulent environment today, especially with digital marketing. So many things are changing and there's so many different ways of doing things and reaching the end goal. But you have to find the quickest way, and it depends on a lot of different factors that are always changing. So it's always evolving, it's always rapidly changing. So it's important to refresh your knowledge in marketing, especially with digital marketing, as you're trying to make a brand successful. And that's really what this podcast is about, is to actually help marketers achieve that knowledge that they can bring to their companies and hopefully to themselves to achieve certain goals.
Absolutely. I'm excited. I'm excited to hear more episodes. And I always tell people, like, marketing isn't something that you learn and then you just do it. It's constant education, listening to podcasts, reading articles, talking to your peers. It's a science. It's a pseudoscience. And the hardest part about marketing, there's so many tactics you can try. And if you try all those tactics, or if you look at your competitors and be like, oh, they're successful, I'm going to do what they're doing, you're ultimately going to fail. So you have to find your voice, the tactics. Pick tactics that are not too much, that are measurable, that you can test and give it time to work. And those are some of the hardest lessons I learned. I used to look at our competitors and be like, oh, they're doing this, we have to try it. Oh, they're doing this, we have to try it. And it's no. What's your culture? What's your voice? What's your audience? And what are you trying to teach them? What are you trying to tell them? And I think you learn that from other marketers, 100%.
That's true. Tanya, if you were to go back in time 10 years, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh, so many things. A couple things. Don't be so afraid to stumble and make mistakes. I used to be a huge perfectionist, and in marketing, you can't be a perfectionist because a lot of your campaigns are not going to perform the way you want them to perform, and that's okay. You learn what's going to work by what's not working. And I think especially like women in the corporate industry, we feel like our value is tied up by doing everything right. And sometimes the best thing you can do is make mistakes and learn from it. And I think I talk a lot about Sharif, but he's been my biggest mentor that way. He's always telling me, it's okay that this didn't work. Let's figure out why and fix it. And don't be afraid. Like, I think 10 years ago, my identity was so wrapped up in what I did. So as a musicologist, that's how I was like, Tanya, the musicologist. And then when that part didn't succeed, I was crushed. So finding balance, like, I'm a marketer, but that's only one facet of who I am. And if that didn't work out for me, I won't be crushed. So it's trying to find balance and fulfillment in your life. That's not just your career. Don't let your career define you.
Don't let your career define you. That's a takeaway for sure. And they say that through your lifetime, you normally would change your careers about 3 or 4 times at least. And especially in the world that we're living in today, where knowledge is so accessible and you can actually build your skill set so quickly by learning things. I think it's great to actually continue to develop yourself personally and try new careers, try something different so you can open up your mind to new things.
Absolutely. And it's that interdisciplinary approach. Even if you're doing a side hustle, some of the things that you learn doing things on the side will help you with your main career in ways that you wouldn't even know. Those transferable skills are so important. That interdisciplinary, diverse approach to a problem is, it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
So Tanya, based on the experience that you had and also the challenges that you've overcome, if there was one big takeaway that you could give to your listeners here today, what would that be?
It's a good question. Don't try to be all things in marketing. Don't try to be all things. Really figure out who you are as a product or as a company, who your audience is, and be authentic and sincere. And I think that's how you will engage. That's how you will find the right platform. That's how you will find the right media. But don't try to do, like, the biggest mistake I see is people doing every social media platform. Be authentic, try things, and give it a month to work. If something doesn't work out right away, give it some time and be able to shift your tactics. And it's okay to make mistakes.
That's good. Tanyas, thank you very much for taking the time today. It's been wonderful to speak with you and to learn about your journey, as well as to learn about Trufla actually, and Trufla Technology. And where can people find you online and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. So it's just LinkedIn /LN/ it's my maiden name, Tanya Hage, TanyahAge. or you can go to trufla.com and find out all about what we do. And we have a lot of great blogs that's really focused on digital marketing and SEO. We put out a really great blog on the new Google Page Experience update, telling you everything you need to know and how to overcome it. So definitely visit our blog site as well on the trufla.com website.
That is awesome. We'll definitely include that in the links. And thank you once again, Tanya. You have a wonderful day and have a successful life.
You too. Thanks so much for having me. Take care.
Thanks.